Hello, everyone. What is up? I am Fernando. I am joined today by Chris. Once again, if you guys don't know me, I am the creator of SportsTimeHQ. I have my own website. I got writers writing for me. Shout out to them. I'm currently in college, and I'm living the nice college life. I'm also the sports editor for my campus newspaper, so definitely shout out to them. And yeah, I got a special guest today, and his name is Chris. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Would you like to introduce yourself? What do you do on Twitter, sports, all that kind of good stuff?
I am on Twitter on the_pre-snap read. I'm also a writer for Rotoballer over there at rotoballer.com. Also have started my own website last year. Haven't gotten under that too much since I joined Rotoballer, but looking to get my draft analysis back up and running soon. So that's the angle of that website.
Great to hear about all that. Everyone go check out Chris. And yeah, we're going to get rolling. So today there was a breaking news of the NFL. In the NFL, there was a blockbuster trade between the Dolphins, the Eagles, the 49ers. So to break it all down, it was basically all picks. The 49ers got the number 3 overall pick by the Dolphins, and the Dolphins got the number 12 overall pick, a 2022 third, a 2022 first, and a 2023 first. And then soon after, the Eagles traded, and the Eagles got the number 12 overall pick, the number 123 overall pick, and a 2022 first round pick. And the Dolphins moved back up to the number 6 overall pick, and they also got the number 156 overall pick. Chris, what do you think of all this? Like, this was basically a 3-team trade, like you said earlier with me. And I mean, it wasn't really a 3-team trade because the Dolphins just traded 2 times.
Right. It was a kind of a Madden trade where you make one trade and then, I can do another trade. And then you do a third and a fourth, and you just kind of end up with a million picks at the end of the draft. And it's like, this doesn't really happen in real life, but it did today.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
No, it was a really interesting deal because, I mean, at the outset, the deal between the Dolphins and Niners made sense. The second deal, I think it telegraphed a lot of things. Honestly, I think there's a couple of things to unpack. I don't want to get too deep into it if you're not ready to get into the actual draft analysis. But I think it told us several things about what multiple teams are looking at right now in the draft, including these 3 teams, but others as well. So.
Yeah, and we can dive right into the draft. So right now, for the first 15 picks in the draft, it goes Jaguars, Jets, 49ers at number 3, Falcons, Bengals, Dolphins at number 6, Lions, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys, Giants, and then number 12 is the Eagles. And then we got the Chargers, Vikings, and the New England Patriots at the very end of the 15. So, right. I mean, I thought Jimmy Garoppolo was going to have another chance in San Francisco, but I mean, I know they did talk about that. They have no plans to trade him, but is there a thing now? Are we seeing that people are now going to go for quarterbacks this year? And since there's a lot of QB talent, does that mean San Francisco is kind of holding Jimmy Garoppolo on a thread?
You read a lot of the rumors right now. So yes, in my article on Rotoball, I dove deep into what the 49ers were going to do this offseason, and I said the most likely thing was probably Garoppolo's hung around. Part of that was me being a pessimistic 49er fan who has seen this team kind of lock in on a guy they think is their guy and sometimes hang with them longer than I think maybe they should. But there was a lot of chatter out there. But right now, I think it means one of 2 things for the 49ers. Either they're looking at someone like Justin Fields or Trey Lance at 3, which I think they could realistically hold on to Garoppolo at that point because I think both Fields and Lance could sit a year. I covered that in my article. I think Lance is more likely to sit a year than Fields, but Fields has some progression issues when I watched his film. I think he has a really nice deep ball. I think he's an accurate thrower. He's a great athlete. I think he has a lot of ability, but that offense, hasn't produced a lot of guys who can just hit the ground running. It's a lot of simple, quick reads, first read, get the ball out of your hands. Indiana took advantage of that. They read the first read on Fields a few times, and they jumped the ball and made some big plays. That wasn't all Fields. That was partly the system, in my opinion. So I could see both of them sitting. If it's Mac Jones or Zach Wilson, I think Zach Wilson is probably going to go too, even though I'd love to see him in San Francisco. But if it's Mac Jones, hoping it's not, but if it is, I think Garoppolo's gone. And they probably have a deal in place with the Patriots, or the structure of a deal already. So I think those are the two routes it could go. But I think Garoppolo, I think there's a lot of posturing right now. They're trying to build his trade value up.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to some of my friends today about sports and everything about this trade, and I was mentioning that if they do go quarterback here, that means Garoppolo is not going to be a San Francisco 49er. He may start. This is what they might do. They might have the new quarterback learn from him a little bit, and then they may trade him mid-season, just before the deadline, or they're going to trade him just before the draft, just during the draft once it goes. Once they go and take their pick to see what the Jets do. Do they draft a quarterback? Do they keep Darnold? Do they draft weapons? Like, what happens with them? But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the Patriots do have some kind of deal in place where, if for every reason that does happen, it's going to go. They might get the Patriots another Jimmy Garoppolo, go buy him again. So, I mean, do we see any value with the wide receivers or tight ends or running backs? Do they get hurt from this trade, depending on if they drafted another quarterback?
So the way I broke this team down, and I still continue to see it this way, I think Deebo Samuel was a good good match for Jimmy Garoppolo. A big reason for that is Samuel has a high drop rate. He has one of the highest drop rates in the NFL. It's over 9% for the past 2 years. That's really high. Which typically, if you watch his film, he's not the deep ball guy either. But he's a great weapon. And Jimmy Garoppolo had one of the shortest air yards per attempt over the past 2 years. In 2019, only Drew Brees had a lower air yards per attempt of NFL starters. And last year, Garoppolo's air yards per attempt was even lower than it was in 2019 when he did play. So I think that matches Deebo Samuel and what he does really well. So I had Samuel's stock actually higher than where a lot of people were drafting him if Garoppolo was going to stay. That had the inverse effect on Ayuk, whose average depth of target was over 9 yards last year, which is almost 3 yards per attempt longer than Garoppolo's average throw. Doesn't mean Ayuk isn't talented. Doesn't mean he couldn't play with Garoppolo. It meant I wasn't sure that he was going to be a favorite of Garoppolo, since the way the 49ers use him and Ayuk's more traditional skill set. I didn't think he was going to get the 7 or 8 targets a year or a game that you wanted from a wide receiver too. This trade, if it's for a quarterback, I think I'm buying Ayuk from this trade. I'm dropping Samuel a little bit. I still like Deebo Samuel, but I'm buying Ayuk shares more than I was before, because I think whoever they pick, I think it will result in more passing attempts per game. Shanahan threw the ball 100 more times a season with Matt Ryan at quarterback than he did with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think it's going to result in probably 1.5 to 2 air yards per attempt more, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you really break down the numbers, that means a lot more intermediate to deep throws, which I think are good for Ayuk.
Yeah, and if Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, but I think Justin Fields should be the number 2 taken. But if Zach Wilson does go to San Francisco, I mean, the pro day was just happening, and Zach Wilson, from what source from Sleeper is saying, that Zach Wilson is launching bombs at his pro day, and this throw across his body on the run, I mean, it seems like he's got this great mobility. He can throw deep. I mean, and that's all in favor of Ayuk. So I agree with you on buying Ayuk. I mean, I tried buying him all last season because he's a rookie, and I mean, his stock is just going up. The way he runs and he goes, I mean, it's just crazy. He hurdles people. I mean, he's phenomenal. And I think if Deebo stays that number 1 and Ayuk's that number 2, I think Ayuk really can be a Justin Jefferson type of numbers next year.
I think what's going to happen, I mean, if whoever the quarterback is, if it's not Garoppolo, it's going to be Kittle's the number one pass catcher, obviously. I think Ayuk's going to be the number two pass catcher. I think all the other quarterbacks are going to have more comfort throwing to traditional receiver routes and sets. I think Samuel will get more jet sweeps, slants, just handoffs like a running back. Don't be surprised if he gets more carries this year, because there's some questions about the health of that backfield, things like that. And so I think Samuel will be a weapon, but I think Ayuk will be the number one wide receiver as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is not the quarterback starting week 1.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what comes in the next month, because the draft is about a month away basically. And we're going to see, there could be multiple more trades coming in. We don't really, last year, I don't think we really saw a trade this big in the draft. There wasn't many teams that traded. I think last year there was only one trade during the draft that happened in the first round. So it'll be interesting to see if there's anything else that happens with that. And moving on to the Miami now pick, they're number 6 now. So if you're having a quarterback go 1, 2, and 3, and maybe Atlanta taking another quarterback there at number 4, where do you think Cincinnati goes? Because if Cincinnati doesn't take that left tackle, I'm thinking that the left tackle is going to Miami, and that's why they're number 6 right now.
I think it should be Penei Sewell. Truth is, I think the Jets should take Sewell at 2 and roll with Darnold. I am a bigger Darnold believer than a lot of people are. I was huge on him out of USC. I get why people are low on him. He's made some really bad decisions, and there's questions about whether he'll pan out. But if you use that number 2 pick on Zach Wilson or a quarterback, you're counting on the pick number 23 and your second rounder turning into weapons that Darnold didn't have. He didn't have any weapons besides Jameson Crowder, pretty much. Corey Davis doesn't really excite you. And so you're counting on that pick number 23, the second round pick, turning into real weapons that will make a difference for Zach Wilson. I don't like that landing spot for Zach Wilson fantasy wise or NFL quarterback wise. So I would have Sewell at 2 and really lock down that offensive line for Sam Darnold. I don't know that that's going to happen. So if I'm high on Sewell, then I'm saying the Bengals should take Sewell, protect Joe Burrow. I had them taking Josh Jones last year to shore up a right tackle in the second round. I was confused why they ignored that right tackle spot in the interior line last year. I thought that was an overestimation of what they had on the roster. This is a deep offensive line class, so they could address that later. But it's also a deep receiver class. So I think it's Sewell or Pitts at 5 for the Bengals right now. One of those two. If I'm the Bengals, as far as talent, value, fit, and those are the two most logical fits.
I wouldn't say it's doubtful, but I think that if the Jets are not going for a quarterback, they need to trade down because they need extra picks. You have some talent building up in New York, and it's with the Dolphins uprising, Josh Allen, those amazing Bills, the Patriots off-season free agency spree. That division is going to be a hard division. And I think the Jets are at the bottom right now.
Oh, yeah.
And 100%. And I think everyone can agree with that one now.
Right.
But yeah, I think, like you said, there's a lot of offensive line. There's a lot of wide receivers. Corey Davis doesn't hit me with that big surprise. But Denzel Mims, he had a lot of injuries last year. He was dealing with injuries. If he can build on like getting that ball, building the connection with Darnold, I think Mims can be a great top receiver, but he needs to get some practice in, and he needs to work on not being able to get those injuries and getting that affecting himself. Right. So, I don't see them drafting a wide receiver so early. I think they need to address possibly quarterback if they don't want to get Darnold, if they don't want to keep Darnold. But where's their running backs? Obviously that's where we're going to think that they're going to go and maybe grab Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, either at their first round pick or possibly in the second round on the 34th pick. But I mean, if you want to draft a running back, you need a line. And
Right.
getting that left tackle right there, that just builds just so much more momentum with the running back. And I think the Jets will be not a playoff contending team next year, but they'll be on the uprise if they keep Darnold and they build on their team.
Right. And it just depends on who's willing to trade up too. I mean, I think they'll go Wilson. I like Wilson, but I think given their situation, I think it's another setting him up for failure, in my opinion, because I don't think they have the resources right now to help him. And they just hired a defensive-minded coordinator. Again, I love Robert Saleh as a leader, and I think his offensive coordinator pick is an interesting one. He does know Shanahan's system, but we don't know enough about their offensive coordinator. No, yeah, this is the guy that is going to help a new rookie quarterback who doesn't really have a whole lot of weapons just succeed no matter what. It almost feels like the same situation Darnold went into when he was drafted in 18, except they do have more picks. And I think Joe Douglas is a better GM. But I still don't love the situation. I rather see them trade back with the Panthers. There, they could probably sit at 7. Pitts isn't going to be there, I don't think. I don't think Jamar Chase will probably be there because I think he's going to the Dolphins at 6. But I do think they could get one of those wide receivers from Alabama or Rashawn Slater and just keep Becton at left tackle, Slater at right tackle, and then just keep using your picks. I think I would wait till the second round on running back because I think I like Javonte Williams almost as much, if not more, than Etienne and Najee Harris, and he'll be there at their pick in round 2 if the other two are not.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's just so great. That was amazing. And I mean, I was just looking back at the San Francisco trade. I don't see them like, why go up to the 3rd overall pick when you're giving up 2 firsts? Like, there's got to be a franchise quarterback that you're aiming for, because
Right.
there's no way you're giving up 2 firsts, a 3rd for the 2022 as well, and then your number 12 overall pick. So there's got to be a reason. They obviously got some scouting info, and I mean, I just don't see them not going for a quarterback here.
Oh.
And obviously, the media always wants to know everything, so that could be a reason why they say we have no plans on getting rid of Garoppolo.
Right. Yeah, they're trying trade value too.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe they'll get a stellar trade back. Maybe Atlanta wants to trade and they move up 1 slot, and now you get basically all your picks back.
Right.
And you do get a great quarterback still. I mean, I don't think Atlanta should draft a quarterback yet. I mean, I just don't see I don't see the reason to exactly. I think you need to build on your defense. I mean, there's a lot of holes in Atlanta, so I think that would definitely help them if they can really build on their team. Because I mean, I think Matt Ryan, I give it 1-2 years tops. If he can't do anything or bring that team back to the playoffs, there needs to be a change. There needs to be a big change into the scenery, because Julio Jones's talent, he's getting up there in age. He's going to start his peak might have already happened, because I mean, he spent a lot of seasons with no injuries, and the last season, boom, injuries. Calvin Ridley, you're kind of ruining his career, but he's doing still phenomenal. I mean, it's something interesting. And then now going on to Philadelphia, I mean, you got 10 Dallas, 11 New York Giants, and now 12 Philadelphia. So NFC East teams. I mean, will Philadelphia be drafting a quarterback? There was a rumor today that they were eyeing that number 3 overall pick to get Zach Wilson.
Right.
Does that mean Jalen Hurts is not their quarterback? Because, I mean, what just happened? I thought Jalen Hurts was going to be their future. Now they get a head coach and everything, and now they want to get rid of him. I mean, I like Jalen Hurts, but sure, he might not be the starter. I mean, he might not be a long-term solution, but I give him a chance, and I would give him wide receivers. I would give him talent, because that team does not have wide receiver talent. So I think you need to give wide receiver talent to them.
So the article I read was that the only QB they were interested in over Hurts was Wilson. And I think they did the math. And I think the 49ers and Eagles, from reading between the lines, the rumor is that no one negotiated for that second pick, which reading between the lines suggests the Jets told them, we're taking Wilson, go away. So I think if that is what happened, they probably are sticking with Hurts. I'm an OU grad, so I am not a big Hurts guy. I came on a pod last year and said I think he'll do fine for you in fantasy, but I don't think he's a long-term starting NFL quarterback. But I do think that they made an interesting deal here. The deal with the Philly and Miami was more interesting to me for Miami because they moved back to 12. If they wanted to take a defensive player, they should have stayed at 12 because most of the defensive players are still going to be available at 12. They moved up to 6 for an offensive player, and it clearly isn't a quarterback. So I'm thinking Jamar Chase. They've got Gesicki, so Pitts is better than Gesicki. But do I think that they're going to trade a future first in 12 to move back up to 6? And with the possibility of the Bengals maybe looking at Pitts at 5. I think they're eyeing Jamar Chase. I think they did the math. The Falcons aren't going to take Chase. The 49ers did not trade up to take Chase since they've got Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. The Jets, they could take Chase, but I don't think they will. So I think they did the math. I think they said we can get the guy we want at 6. So we'll trade back. We'll get 2 picks. We'll give back one of those, and we'll still get our guy. And the math worked out really well for them. I'm pretty confident projecting Jamar Chase to the Dolphins right now. Eagles could be all over the place. The one thing I think is interesting is, did they look at the Giants signing Kenny Golladay and say, okay, that changes the math on who's going to take Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith? Because if the Dolphins are the first person to take Jamar Chase, a receiver, and then let's say the Lions take a receiver, the next logical person to take a receiver was at 11, the Giants. If they're not taking one at Golladay anymore, they can move back to 12 and still get one of those 3 guys that they like and help Hurts. And both Waddle and Smith have familiarity with Hurts as well from Alabama. So I'm leaning towards that's the math they did, is that we can still get one of these 3 guys by moving back to 12.
I mean, earlier, I think it was earlier 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that Miami, what they should do is they should trade away Devontae Parker. I did get a lot of comments that they might not get that much back for him, which, I mean, I don't expect them to get much for him. But you draft Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith at number 3, but obviously they're now at number 6. You still got that chance for a wide receiver. You draft one of them. Will Fuller is a spectacular number 2 receiver.
Right.
And then you have Lynn Bowden that goes over Preston Williams. And I mean, that wide receiving core, that's great because Lynn Bowden reminds me of possibly a future Brandon Ayuk because he can do about everything. And Lynn Bowden, I think he's going to be a sleeper this year for fantasy. I think he might be a breakout player this year. But this all depends on what happens with Parker. If Parker can leave and Preston Williams, and he outbeats Preston Williams in training camp, I think Lynn Bowden can be a great sneaky pick in late drafts.
Right.
But yeah, I think, I mean, if it's not Penei Sewell that goes at number 6 or number 5 with Cincinnati, does that mean he drops like past number 10? Because Jaguars quarterback, Jets quarterback or wide receiver, doubt wide receiver, but obviously San Francisco possible quarterback, Atlanta possible quarterback, Cincinnati, they got a bunch of holes. Miami wide receiver, Detroit wide receiver, Carolina quarterback, Denver I kind of see as a defensive player, Dallas corner, Giants maybe another defensive player. I mean, now Philadelphia comes in and then it's either a quarterback or it's a wide receiver. And obviously they're not going to draft a quarterback, so they're going to go wide receiver.
Right. So it's possible. And I'm seeing it more in mocks and rumor mills that he could fall into the 9 or 10 range. So it wouldn't surprise me based on what I'm hearing and reading. It would surprise me talent level and how important the position he plays is. He's one of the highest graded tackles that I've had in a long time, since Joe Thomas, really. I think that the Bengals, he's a perfect fit for what they need. Doesn't mean they'll take him. They ignored tackle last year. They could do it again this year and take another weapon. If I'm the Dolphins, I still consider him and say, hey, I've still got pick 18. I can get a receiver there, or I've got the draft assets to go from 18 up to 9 or 10 and get Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle there. They've got a lot of room to move. And if I'm them and Sewell falls to me at 6, I value him, and then I make a move around with all those picks to get another receiver because I don't think Sewell will fall as much. I'm not saying that's what they will do, but it's a possibility. The Lions, they've got a good left tackle. I think Sewell's better, and I think they should be building for the future. I think Goff is not going to work out in that offense. I think they're going to be taking Spencer Rattler first overall next year.
Hot take.
I could see Sewell fitting anywhere between 5 to 10 because he's one of the better left tackles. Everyone could use another tackle. Not saying he'll go there, but he could fall anywhere there. I'll be surprised if he's not in the top 10 though.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he falls past Miami and Detroit doesn't want to trade, I mean, it's I'm kind of seeing like if Carolina, if they think Sewell is going to be better than getting a Trey Lance and protecting Teddy Bridgewater, then go for it. But
right.
if Sewell does drop, I think there will be a trade right at the end of the top 10. But I mean, it'll be really interesting because it looks like it's going to be mainly all offense in the first 10. And then right after that, it's just all defense.
Right.
Now, there's been a lot of mocks about New England taking a quarterback. With them re-signing Cam, them adding weapons-ish, and fixing up that defense. I mean, they could be a playoff contending team depending on what Cam does next year. Now, we did have rumors that they were going to take Mac Jones at 15, a lot of rumors, and it would be one of the best fits. Does that mean, does New England still get Mac Jones at 15, or do they go for defense like they usually would?
I mean, I'm hoping they get Mac Jones because it means the 49ers didn't trade 3 first-rounders to go up to 3 to take Mac Jones, which I think would be terrible value, personally. So, yes, I mean, before the 49ers made this move and interjected themselves as a possible Mac Jones fit in the top 3, I had him going to either Carolina at 8 because of the connection there at the Senior Bowl, things like that. I thought he could fit at the 49ers at 12. Or the Patriots at 15, or I could see Washington trading up to get him as well. I think the Patriots make the most probably sense and would probably see him as the best fit. I also think it's probably a mistake for them to stick with Cam and think we're going to do a whole lot. I said that last year, though. I wrote an article last year saying I thought Cam was being overestimated in New England. He's not a terrific passer. He's had 1 year where he's been better than average in accuracy. His career accuracy is worse than Josh Allen's. It was last year before Josh Allen had his year this year. So I think quarterback should be on their radar, but that's also why I think they're going to keep pushing for Garoppolo. And that's why I think Jones could not be in New England. I think the main reason he won't end up in New England is they either make a trade for Garoppolo now or they know they're getting Garoppolo next year, because the 49ers just clearly traded up for a quarterback and are not going to keep him past this year.
Exactly. And I mean, I really think if it's Garoppolo, it's because Garoppolo knows the system. He has worked well with the team. And was Garoppolo pushed out of New England? Did Tom Brady not want him there because he might have been benched for Jimmy Garoppolo? So that could have been the reason why Jimmy Garoppolo left. And now that Brady's gone, they needed a quick turnaround. And clearly Cam was not the option. But they re-signed Cam to try and get players to come to New England and try to lure them there and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get a nice quarterback after. Cam could be the starter, but we're going to try and get another quarterback. And I mean, Jones is just a great rookie that I think just has this development that he can do with Cam Newton. And I really think Jones could be their future option. Jimmy Garoppolo, he tore his ACL. He has injuries. So is it worth taking a chance on a quarterback that I think is 27 now, correct? Or 29? 29, yeah.
I think he's about 30.
Yeah, exactly. So do you take a chance on a 30-year-old quarterback, or do you take a chance on a rookie quarterback that you probably will never see the 15th pick again if you draft a quarterback? You might be getting late round picks again. So it's kind of like something like, or do they trade up and above Carolina and go to Detroit? Detroit and New England have a lot of connections, clearly, because a lot of New England players are going to Detroit. So is there a connection between Detroit and New England? Will New England jump up to 7, take Trey Lance? Because I did hear that Trey Lance could be going to New England at one point.
Right. I think that knowing Bill Belichick's mindset, I think he thinks he can get more out of Garoppolo than anyone else can. And I think the rumors were when the 49ers traded for him that Belichick loved Garoppolo and did not want to get rid of him and thought Garoppolo was the guy to prove Belichick was the reason the Patriots were so good, not Brady. I think there's still an element there. I think Belichick is another one of those coaches who I think he wants to do it his way, and he sees things differently than other people. Look what they did last year. They drafted 2 tight ends in the 3rd round, and then neither of those guys are going to be very relevant because they just signed 2 more. And so those are kind of wasted 3rd round picks. But he just he has an idea of what he wants to do. And my gut says that what he wants is to bring Garoppolo back, be the guy who makes him better than Shanahan did, and, takes them back. I think that he's eyeing that. Do I think there's a possibility he trades up? Yeah. But I think that if they do move around, Mac Jones just feels like a Patriot to me. He feels like a Shanahan guy too, because Shanahan's in love with Kirk Cousins, and Mac Jones reminds me of Kirk Cousins. But, he just reminds me as one of those guys that fits these coaches who want their system to be the star. They don't want the quarterback to be the star. And I just get that feeling from both Belichick and Shanahan that part of them, they want to be the star in that town a little bit.
Now, do you think if the Patriots do have a deal set, do you think that Garoppolo is going to be traded for New England's 15th overall pick, or will it be a later pick?
The rumors were that they were willing to go up to a 2. With what we know about draft pick valuations, a future first is often seen as a 2. It wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers wait to make sure the guy they want is there at 3, and then have some sort of agreement. For example, like the Patriots 2023 first round pick that replaces one of the first they just gave up. All of a sudden they just traded 2 firsts and a 3rd to go up to 3. They look pretty smart there. That's not bad value. So I don't think they'll get 15. I think the value on the draft charts of 15 is too high. I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you. That's I agree with you 100% on that.
If they get a first, I think it'll be a future first, and they'll only be able to swing that because of the way picks in the future are devalued, and maybe Belichick starts thinking, I'm not going to need that pick in 2 or 3 years. I may decide I want to go retire, or I'm going to be winning too much, and the pick won't be worth that much.
Yeah, we did say that they traded away a bunch of different picks for the 49ers. They traded the 2022 first and 2023 first. So that means that if the Patriots do trade for Garoppolo, maybe they are going to give a 2023 first or 2022 first, right, which means the 49ers didn't really lose much. They kind of got value. They still lost a lot, but they still got more value back still, right, for future.
Yeah, and it depends. If they gave up even 2 firsts for Mac Jones, I am not that high on Mac Jones. I think he's good. I see why people like him, but his game against Georgia, for example, he made some mistakes there. He had some balls that were placed poorly. Let the DBs get after it, and that Georgia defense is talented. Ojulari and the other pass rushers got after him some, despite his strong offensive line. It doesn't mean Mac Jones can't be good. It means I think that game is a good example of why he's limited as far as, mobility. He can't, really good pass rushers, if they get in the backfield, they can bring him down, like a lot of quarterbacks. He's not going to win a lot with his feet. And so it's all about ball placement. And that Georgia game is why it jumped out, is usually I saw him put the ball exactly where a receiver needed it. But I saw the Georgia corners and safeties make some plays on balls in that game because he didn't put it exactly where it needed to be. And, when I look at Justin Fields, who I think has a better arm and more mobility, someone like that. I prefer Fields for the physical profile. I make a move up for ceiling. I don't make a move up to 3 for a high floor personally. Dynasties are built by elite quarterbacks. Mac Jones could be elite, but it's all math, and the odds are better, in my opinion, of any of the other 4 being elite. Now, the odds might be better that Lance busts than Mac Jones, but that's why I make that move. So I'll be a little disappointed if they do go with Jones, because it'll be a high floor, lower ceiling move, and that's a lot to give up for him. And fantasy-wise, if you read my article, there's a lot of fallout there too. Justin Fields and that offense could arguably be the best fantasy rookie quarterback in this class. So if you're in a super flex league, if you're in a dynasty league, I wouldn't balk at you taking Justin Fields as a 49er over Trevor Lawrence, even though I like Trevor Lawrence better as a quarterback. With his coach, George Kittle, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, all in place. Trent Williams as your left tackle. That's just a terrific freaking situation. And even if Fields sits for half a year or whatever, the dynasty value there for him or Wilson in that offense is terrific. They're, in my opinion, QB 13 or so in dynasty redrafts as 49ers. Mac Jones is closer to QB 18 or 19, because I think we've seen what a player like him can do in that offense with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he could be a little better than Garoppolo, but I don't think the ceiling is as high.
So if Garoppolo goes back to New England, is Garoppolo a not top, but like top 15 for say, or top 12, let's say, top 12 quarterback for fantasy if he goes to New England?
Well, right now he's being drafted. I checked this in February. He was being drafted, his ABDP was QB 24 in San Francisco. That was a tad low for me, but not super low. He's lower in New England because I think there's more weapons in San Francisco. I think Kyle Shanahan is a better offensive mind than Josh McDaniel. I think Josh McDaniel is a little overrated. And so, no, I don't even have Garoppolo probably as QB2 in 12-man Superflex leagues. If he's a Patriot, if I'm being honest, I could be surprised. But he doesn't have a lot of value with his legs. His best weapons are going to be Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, and Nelson Aguilar. It's just not exciting.
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, say they don't go for Garoppolo and say they do go for Jones. Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned Jones has 18. You ranked him 18. And was
he's a 49er.
Yeah. If he goes to New England, where do you rank him then? Do you draft him lower since of the wide receiver? Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I mean, that is about it, I'd say. I mean, that was great. We basically covered the top 15 picks. I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, who is your top quarterback in this draft? Like, who do you think can provide the biggest upside in Dynasty and the NFL?
I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is special. I mean, we all watched him beat Alabama as a freshman and thought, wow. And, he hasn't disappointed since then. I think his floor is higher than anybody. And I think his ceiling's just as high, if not higher than anybody. If you're drafting him in fantasy, yeah, his first year could be a little limited in redrafts. He's not a QB1 just because of the weapons, and he's a rookie, and he doesn't run quite as much as someone like Deshaun Watson did when he was a rookie. And Deshaun Watson had DeAndre Hopkins, which helps.
A lot.
But Trevor Lawrence should be the first pick in the draft. He will be the first pick in the draft. Now, like I said, if I'm drafting in Dynasty and the 49ers draft Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence is still my number one Dynasty rookie quarterback because I'm not as high on Mac Jones. If Zach Wilson or Justin Fields goes to the 49ers, I'm strongly considering them as Dynasty picks over Lawrence because, I think They both add just as much, if not more, with their legs. They have better weapons up front and a better head coach and offensive mind. So my ideal would be Zach Wilson in San Francisco. I think he could be very dangerous for a number of years with that team. Plus the scheme fit with what he did at BYU is pretty close.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot. I mean, obviously, for the best quarterback in this draft, obviously, we already know. I think everyone, it's a no-brainer. It's obviously Trevor Lawrence. Like you said, if Zach Wilson does go to San Francisco, he's got the elite talent there. And it kind of reminds me of a Justin Herbert from this year. Justin Herbert had the talent. Justin Herbert popped. And I mean, if it wasn't for Joe Burrow's injury, maybe he wasn't Offensive Rookie of the Year, but we don't know that. He could have still outbeaten Joe Burrow. We'll have to see next year, see what happens there. As for Trey Lance,
Burrow before the injury.
Okay, yeah, I kind of was saying that too, and I had someone on the side of me also say that Justin Herbert was the best quarterback in last year's draft, and if it does turn out to be Joe Burrow struggles, then yeah, Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in last year's draft, and the Chargers absolutely stole that pick from everyone. But yeah, I think Trey Lance, if he falls in the Panthers, I don't see him being an elite quarterback there with not that much talent there. Same thing if Mac Jones falls to the Patriots. Sure, like you said, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, but where else? Where else? The running backs, there's struggles. There's struggles in the running back situation. Wide receivers, yeah, you kind of plugged some in, and they could be elite wide receivers, like Belichick somehow does with Julian Edelman, 7th-round pick. So,
Sure.
Or Wes Welker, undrafted. I mean, you could find those elites, but it really is whoever falls to San Francisco, because the Jets, I don't see having that big talent unless they draft a running back and maybe an elite wide receiver. So if anything, whoever falls to San Francisco or Atlanta, I wouldn't actually mind seeing Atlanta too, because Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst, he kind of didn't really have a year last year. So I'd like to see what happens with him if he bounces back. So running back Todd Gurley, we all know he can be elite. Obviously, he has the situation. So we'll see.
I think he's gone. So
Yes. Sorry. I totally forgot about that.
I don't think he's signed with anybody yet, but I don't think he's coming back.
Do you think Todd Gurley goes to the Patriots?
I think he'll probably sign late in camp or this summer with a team that has an injury. So I think it'll depend on who has a summer running back injury. I think that's where he's going to land.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people say that Todd Gurley is going to the Patriots, which, I mean, Bill Belichick can do Bill Belichick things. So
sure, but that's it's fantasy wise. I mean, it's always a timeshare and it's always a headache.
Oh, all the time. Last year in one of my big leagues, I started 0-5, did a couple of trades, got Jonathan Taylor, James Robinson, and yeah, I won the championship.
Nice. Yeah.
So that was pretty crazy. But yeah, I think that wraps up this episode.
Yeah.
Sports Time. No problem. Once again, I am Fernando of SportsTimeHQ, and I had my guest star today, Chris, and you can follow him on Twitter at _pre-snap-read. Make sure to follow him. He is great. He writes great articles for Rotoballer. Make sure to check him out.
Appreciate it.
Everyone else, have a good rest of the day, and I hope you guys all enjoyed listening.